back again, part 2 of our carving the Cone Santa. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, because we're going to finish and we're going to paint that carving that we did yesterday. I took a few minutes off of screen to kind of clean up a little bit. I went back with my knife and I used that to pick out some areas where I had a fuzzy, I had a chip in there, I had a slice or whatever. I took the time to clean that up, and then I took the time to use my brush. If you don't have a brush like this, you're going to spend $2 or $3 on it. Nice little thing to use, because I can get here and all these little corners where a little fuzzy sticks in there, a little slice of wood. This allows me to clean all that up. And I can get in there and I can see, once I get it cleaned up, what I need to go back to with a knife. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Let me show you something that I have come to use a lot in the last few years. Because I know there's a lot of carvers say, well, if you carve clean, you don't have all that cleanup to do. Well, it's not always possible. Some people are not as good a carver as those others who say you should carve clean all the time, and that's true. But if you've been doing it for 40 years, good on you. Do that. Some people have not. And so I use what I call my whizzer wheel. And so I have a Dremel. I have a Dremel 4000. Dremel 4000 is one of their bigger ones. I've taken the collet off the front and I run a wand, a flexible wand, so that I can use the wand, end of the wand like a pencil. I hold it like this. And on the insert of that, I have these cut pieces that I've cut out of I don't know the size of this thing, but it's a maroon scuff pad. They make them in green and white and gray, but I found the maroon works better for getting the stuff off that I want to get off of there. And the gray doesn't work very well. The green leaves green marks on my wood, and the white just buffs it. So if you want it real smooth, you use a buffer just like we would on a sharpening wheel. Anyway, I take these things and I cut them in squares, and I mount them on a mandrel. These squares are, I don't know, 1.5 inches maybe. Let me grab a tape measure there. Just so you know, full disclosure, these things are about 2 inches across. So I'm doing them in, get it upside down right here. Doing them in 2-inch squares, and I mount it on a mandrel. A mandrel, these things I used to buy them at Woodcraft for $1.50. So we're talking high dollar. But a mandrel is just simply a burr that I can, not a burr, but a handle that I can put into the end of my Dremel, and I mount those scuff pads right here and tighten that down. Make sure, if you're going to do that, make sure that get it focused in here, make sure that your mandrel has a washer there. I use nylon washers when I can find a metal if I have to. But what that does, sorry, I've got things laying all over the place. What that does is allow me to go back over my carving with this whizzer wheel, I call it, and just clean up a little bit. And this Dremel 4000, the advantage of this one is it runs up to about, I don't know, 2,000 RPMs or whatever. I don't know what the number is. I go by sound. If it sounds like it's going too fast, then it's going too fast, and I slow it down. Let me plug this in and show you what it is, show you how it does it. Again, full disclosure, full safety requirements. Anytime you use this, these fiber pieces come off. They break off and they fly all over the place. And if you've got a beard like I do, they get all in there. My suggestion is don't ever do one of these without eye protection and nose protection. And so you can wear goggles and you can wear a mask. What I usually do is I use a shield. I bought this shield off Amazon, I don't know, $40, and you could probably buy better ones, cheaper, whatever. But I use this to protect my eyes. I only have 2, and I use it to protect my lungs. I only have 2, so I want to protect them. And so anytime I'm using this thing, I don't want those particles flying all the way around. I want to clean it up. So you're probably not going to see much of a result from this piece, but I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. I'll take just a few minutes to do that. You can hear how the sound is different when it goes faster and faster. But all I'm going to do Okay, enough of that noise. Now, some people will tell you, oh, that's just another version of sanding. The difference between this and sanding, and I did a video not too long ago on rasps versus sandpaper, why you shouldn't use sandpaper on your carvings. But the difference between that and this is this doesn't, this Dremel with these Scotch pads here do not sand your wood. They take care of stuff there. They burnish more than anything. And burnishing is just simply smoothing down the outside edges. The advantage of that is when you do sandpaper, when you use sandpaper on your carvings, it flays open this soft wood. And when it flays that open, you have to figure out how you're going to get that wood back together, because once it's opened up, it wants to soak in a lot of paint and it'll get darker and darker and darker. And so the other question is, where do you start and where do you end? Do I start at 80 grit? Do I start at 100, 150, 220? I can go all the way up to 12,000 or more. Where do I stop? At what point am I at the point where I want to do what I want to do? This gets me to that point fairly quickly, and that's what I like about it. Again, you buy the mandrel, and I know they're not very expensive. I think I bought some at Woodcraft, and I bought some online, and I think I got 12 of them for about 20 bucks. And it's just simply a shaft with a small screw, big head, with some washers in there. You want some washers in there to keep that piece from coming out directly out of your mandrel. And I generally mount 3 of them. I've done it with 2 when I need to get into a tight spot. You do it with 1 and it just kind of folds it over. So do it with 2 or 3 and you'll get the results you like. You'll get some of that stuff cleaned up, stuff that you can't get in there with your knife, stuff you don't want to piddle, play, and putter with, and get that done. All right, I'm going to end this section of the video and we'll transition into the next section of this same video where we're going to paint and finish this. So I'll see you in the next section. Have a good one. Okay, I think we're about ready to paint this thing. So the good thing about painting this fella is I only have about 4 or 5 colors. I need a good black, and I don't want a black that's too stark or too bright. So I'm going to use this Deco Art soft black. I need a red, and they make a tomato red. They make a Santa red. Santa red's a little richer than that other one. Here's the Santa red right here, and here's the tomato red. I like that for blush and highlights on the cheek. We're going to use the Santa red. It's a little bit darker and a little bit more like a Santa Claus suit. I need a white. I'm almost out of white. I'll have to switch, but I got a snow white because it's really pure white. I could use titanium or whatever, but this one will work. We need some flesh, and so what I like to do is use some medium to bring out the grain. So I use this refined linseed oil. It's a little more expensive than the boiled stuff, but I find the last couple of years I've been using it, it gives me a more natural color than anything else. On top of that, for the face, and I'm only going to use this on the face. It's expensive, so I don't just nilly-willy splash it on everything. But I'm going to use this for my flesh. It gives me a good base for the flesh. I can then come in with a deep blush, which unfortunately you can't find anymore, but you can go to Deco Art and figure out what makes deep blush. I saved off their new paint recommendations. To make deep blush, you need 2 drops of this and 3 drops of that, whatever. So you can use that deep blush, and then I like a regular flesh tone. So I think this one is called Base Flesh. So by the time I mix these 2 together, I get a color that's one's a little lighter, one's a little darker. And then I get the tomato red a little bit for blush, or the other red, sorry, the Santa red for blush, just a can't figure out why I keep pulling out the wrong one. Santa red, and then I wanted the tomato red. Yeah, that was right. Tomato red just for blush, and then I'm going to use those colors for the flesh. So one of the things I like to do to start off, I want to just go over it, make sure there's nothing here that needs to be refinished, needs to be recarved or anything like that, and I don't see any places. I see a few black marks down here where I did some drawing, but those will come out. I could take a knife and cut those out, but that's going to be black anyway. And I think it looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to take let's move these other colors out of my way. I'm going to take my refined linseed oil. I don't need much of it, so I use a small bristle brush. I'm going to dip it straight out of there, and I'm just going to put it on, just to wipe off most of that brush, and I'm going to put it right there where the face is, where the nose is, where the cheeks are, and where the other cheek is. And I want to make sure I get refined linseed oil over all of that flesh. Make sure you get it down in here. For those of you that do an antiquing method when you're done, you're going to want to make sure you get this down in there, otherwise antiquing medium will make it really, really dark. I put this on because I can't put anything over it until it kind of sets in and dries. And so I've got that on there. And I'm going to set this brush aside because I don't need it anymore. Next thing I want to do is use some black because I want to do that bottom. I've got my hairdryer set up so it'll get a little bit noisy in here, but it won't be too bad. We'll only be it for a few minutes, and I'll kind of try to keep that noise down. And so I'm going to put, I don't need much black, so I'm going to put maybe 3 or 4 drops in there. Use my dropper, water dropper I've been using forever. It's 14 different colors now. And I want to use about twice as much water as I use in color. Mix that really well, because this is the only thing that's going to be black on this carving. And I'm going to, don't forget to leave some room here or somewhere on your carving to sign it. And all I'm going to do is just paint over that. That's black marker. It's gonna be hidden for the most part when I put enough black on there, and I'm not so worried about it. Anyway, I'm just going to paint on the bottom. This isn't watered down like normal, like most caricature carvers will tell you, 10 to 1 or 9 to 1. This is about 2 to 1, maybe 3 to 1. But I'm trying to cover the whole thing so that the bottom's going to be another black, or the black that I want. The other thing I could do is mix it with a Mars black or a carbon or charcoal black to get it darker, but I think this will be okay. You know, and leaving these lines in here lets somebody an opportunity that if they pick it up and say, well, I can buy that at Walmart and it's resin, and you go, well, you can't buy this because this is real. Okay, I got that part. I'm going to paint right around the bottom, because what I want to do is separate the bottom from the bottom of the coat. And so I've made myself a V cut in there, and I can't show it to you without putting my hands in the way. So I'm just going to go right up to that V tool line, and if I'm over one way or the other, that's okay. This is the bottom, and nobody's really worried about the bottom. Add a little bit more water here because I still got all this stuff to do. I know a lot of people say, I don't paint, I don't like painting. You know, being an artist is all about creating. It's all about figuring out what works for you. And a lot of people, and I was that way at one time, a lot of people just don't like painting, so they'll finish their carving with just linseed oil. I got no problem with that. It's not going to work for me. I like bringing out the colors. Now, Having said that, I've done painting and I've done landscapes and not portraits. I've done landscapes and barns and things like that. I need a little more black in there, so let me pour a little black. There we go. Make it a little bit thicker because that's thinned down to the point where it's not going to cover that wood very well. And while I don't want to cover up all the wood, I want it to be able to see that it's wood, but I also want it to be a dark enough color so that you think it's the base of the carving, the boots or whatever. It offsets it from the coat and the face to give you a definite separation between those two. All right, getting back to my point about creating, let me pontificate for just a minute. Pontificate means, I guess, get on my high horse and talk about something for a minute. If you don't want to listen to that, feel free to tune it out. But I want to read you something from a book I just finished reading. This book is called How to Fly a Horse, right? By Kevin Ashton. And it simply says in some of these paragraphs, creation demands belief beyond reason. By that he means you've got to believe beyond your skill level. So if you're an average carver, you're an average or a beginner painter, when you go to create, you've got to believe beyond what you already have done, what you know you can do. You've got to believe that you can do it the way you want to do. Faith is how we face failure. Not faith in a higher power. There's nothing wrong with that, although we may choose that too. But faith that there's a way forward. Creators redefine failure. Failure is not final. It carries no judgment, yields no conclusions. The word failure comes from the Latin fallere, F-A-L-L-E-R-E, to deceive. Failure is deceit. It aims to defeat us. We must not be fooled. Failure is lesson, not lost. It is gain, not shame. A journey of 1,000 miles ends with a single step. Is every other step a failure? No. Failure is not wasteful, but it's useful. Time spent failing is time spent well. Wandering in creation's maze is never a waste of time. Only leaving it is. Time is the raw material of creation. Wipe away the magic and the myth of creating, and all that remains is work. The work of becoming expert through study and practice, the work of finding solutions to problems, and then problems with those solutions, the work of trial and error, the work of thinking and perfecting, the work of creating. Creating consumes. It is all day, every day. It knows neither weekends nor vacations. It's not when we feel like it. It is habit, compulsion, obsession, and vocation. The common thread that links creators is how they spend their time. No time is off. No matter what you read, no matter what they claim, nearly all creators spend nearly all their time on the work of creation. There are few overnight successes and many up all night successes. I'll read a little bit more of this a little bit later, but I want you to understand that when you start on this journey of creating, it is not easy. It is nowhere, it's not going to be easy. Yeah, sure, I could sit here and I could copy someone else and I could follow a tutorial like I'm making here, but the act of creating and the act of making is a journey. It is not a destination. It's not, well, once I get there, I can do this. No, you won't get there unless you take that journey. If you're not good at painting, when are you going to get good at painting? You're not going to wake up one night after a wonderful dream and all of a sudden be a fantastic painter of your carvings. If you want to become a good painter on your carvings, you're going to have to work at it. There is nothing else you can do. You're going to have to stay up all night thinking about it sometimes when you want to create new projects. For those of us that are creating ideas for other people to do or ideas that we enjoy doing, there has to be that journey. And I sound like I'm pontificating or preaching. Well, I've preached in a few pulpits my time. I don't anymore, but this is all about what your journey is going to look like and what results you're going to get out of that. Now, yeah, I could sit here and all of us could have stopped sometime earlier in our carving journey and just buy books and patterns and follow somebody else's stuff. I don't know about you. I haven't met a lot of you. I've met some of you. And the ones that I've met and talked to and have these conversations with, they get frustrated when they can't do what they need to do. But the good thing is, I have yet to meet anybody. In 20 years, almost 20 years of doing this, I have met to meet anybody who has just given up. I'm sure those folks are out there. And I can't blame them. I don't know your circumstances. I don't know your situation. But I have met very few people who just give up and say, I can't do it. The successful ones, the ones who want to be successful, the ones who want to grow as an artist, are continually creating new stuff. I have a notebook over here. I've showed it on a couple of my videos, and I've talked about it. And Blake Lunsford had me on International Association of Wood Carvings one time, wood carvers, and I talked about my book, and I threw out ideas because that book is full of ideas for carvings. And now, you know I'm a caricature carver, and that's what I do. I do caricature figures, some of them animals, the rest of them are humans. That's what I enjoy doing. And so every time I see a strange idea or something that makes me laugh or something that I think is cool, I write it down in my book, or I try to remember. Sometimes I remember them, and then I forget to write them down. And then the next day I'm going, gosh dang it, what was that idea? And my wife will remind me sometimes because, we'll have that discussion. And she always says, get up from the couch or get out from behind whatever you're doing. Go write that down, even if you just write it on a piece of paper laying next to you so you can transfer it later. My notebook has a lot of ideas. Some of them are well beyond my ability to carve because, it's something that it has, 27 different pieces to it or whatever because it's a scene of some sort. But I'm getting around to doing some of those. You'll see some of them at shows that I do. You'll see some of them on here. You'll see some of them on my Instagram. You'll see some of them on my webpage. Maybe even catch up with me on Etsy or eBay. I throw some stuff on there every once in a while, seeing if I can make a sale and give me gas to my next show or gas to the liquor store or whatever, So anyway, I have a lot of ideas and I'm constantly writing them down. I will never live long enough to do the hundreds of ideas I have in there. But I'm hoping I'm going to live long enough. All right. We've got the red. So before I go on to painting the white, I'm going to hit this with the hairdryer for just a few seconds. So turn the sound down if you want to, but I'll be back in about 30 seconds. Okay, that's just enough to clear it up. I had a spot of black on here I gotta paint over. All right. Now here's another question that we always have. You don't want just pure white on the beard, pure white on the hair, pure white on the mustache, pure white on the ruff, pure white on the back of the hair, pure white. You don't want pure white on all of that. So sometimes for face hair, I'll do a light gray and then come back over it with a white wash. And then for the fur and the ruff, I do a white with just a little bit of yellow. We might get away with that today. Let's try that. I'm going to put 2 splashes of white in here. I'm using Snow White. I'm using this Deco Art Americana paint. I'm going to put a splash of white in here. And I don't water white down as much as I water any other paint because I want the white to be a really strong color. And so I've got 2 whites. One of them I'm going to do just a little bit of cad yellow because I don't want it to have a lot. I want it to have a drop. So one little drop in there. Come on. Might be too much, but that's enough. You can see that one little dot I have of yellow in there. This one I'm going to do with a watered down So I want a light gray. So this light gray, brain gray, I just want a little bit. I don't need much of it. And again, that's about all the gray I need. Okay, I'm going to water that gray down a little bit. I have this well over here that I use that has 3 sections, 2 of them for pure water, 1 for rinsing, and I'm always getting them mixed up, always pulling dirty water into where I don't want it to go. But such is the life of an artist. I'm not sure you can see much of it in this camera that I've got. But let me mix these 2 whites and see if you can see the difference. Probably not, or at least not much of it. I can as I sit here. So these 2 whites, here's the one that has a little yellow because it's got the yellow up here so you can see it. Here's the white. If I pulled out both of those, here's the white. Here's the yellow. You can see a little bit of that difference between the 2. I'm going to use that yellow on the fur. And so I got to make sure it's mixed up well, or otherwise I'll get yellow in some spots and other colors in other spots. So I'm just going to put this against that red. Hopefully that red will tone it down and you won't see as much yellow as I'm seeing on the palette right now that I mixed it pretty well. But I want to give this an aged look. I don't want it to look like Santa Claus just got his hat from the dry cleaners. I want it to have a little bit of color. And so it's been hanging in the closet. He's used it a lot. One of the problems with painting white on basswood is so light, sometimes you don't know where you started, and so you forget and you go back over it, and by the time you're done with it, you put 4 coats on it one time. It takes a long time for that to dry. Anyway, that's got a little bit of yellow to it. We're going to put that on the bottom. I have a bunch of these little sticks with screws in them that I used to use a lot when I was painting, and I didn't want the paint to get all over my fingers and I didn't want to touch it. I keep forgetting to pull those out, and I'm in the middle of painting going, gosh dang it, why didn't I do that? No, well, you know, you live and learn, you get in a hurry. I like these things. I don't want my video. Uh-oh, we got a little bit of red on the bottom. We'll have to clean that up. See that red up here? Maybe this white will cover it up. Let's see what it does. Yep, that might work. We can come back and cut that off, that red part off, but I think we'll successfully navigate that with a little bit of paint over top of it. So I mixed up in this well. I mixed up a good bit of this stuff because I've got to paint not only the bottom of the coat, but I've got to paint the part coming down the middle, the front of the coat, and then I've got to paint the part on the hat. Let's go back to where that red was and see if we can't dab a little bit more paint on there to hide it. You'll know it's there. Your customer will not. Anybody who receives this carving will not. Okay, got paint on my hands. I'll wipe that off a little bit and grab it by the bottom. See if we can't be steady enough to paint this. I'm finding as I get older, sometimes depending on the activity of the day, mowed the yard or whatever, my hands get a little unsteady. They don't want to be as smooth as it was when I was 20, 25, 30. My grandma always told me, don't get old. You won't like it. And there's parts of it I like it. And there's parts I don't. One part I don't like is being on first name basis with my doctors and seeing them more than I see my grown kids. You just go, okay, that's enough of that. Can I have a break? You know, the wallet needs to recover from the last 3 prescriptions and the 2 visits I had before that. Give me an amen if you agree with me. I can almost hear you. All right, I want to dry this stuff that I painted. Let me get over here and hit these wells. That's the thing about when you tool your wood. Sometimes, depending on what you're doing, it's easy to miss a spot on painting. My wife calls them holidays. And I swear the moment she picks up one of my carvings, she can spot every holiday on there. I'm going to turn on the hair dryer for just a second. There we go. I think he is looking like a jolly little fella. I didn't get it all dried, so I have to be careful when I'm doing it. But now I want to do the beard and the hair because I got 2 spots to do that. I'm going to switch to a slightly smaller brush, so I've got a little bit more control. That's one of the never-ending searches of artists is trying to figure out which brush you want to use for what part. You know what? I forgot to paint that, didn't I? I didn't paint right there. So let's get that done. I missed the front of his jacket. We'll let that dry before we come back here and hit that spot again. There we go. Okay. Wipe off. Get down into that pure white. Nope. 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 We're going to do gray first. We were going to do an underlayment of gray. All right. So here's the gray. We're going to mix it up really well. And I want it fairly watery because I want it to be down in the valleys. I want it to be darker underneath the lighter stuff. So we'll give it just a little bit more water. And then I'm going to paint that. Start at the hair at the back. That'll be the part that people won't see as much as they will the face. You're close enough to see that? We're just going to do some gray in there. It looks darker on the film than it does here, so... Film, it's electronic. I don't know why I said the film. It looks darker than it really does because I got a lot of light shining down here, so. But anyway. This paint has a tendency to settle. These kinds of paints do, acrylic and water. So make sure that every 2 or 3 strokes in your well of paint, make sure you're stirring that up a little bit because you don't want to find out that one part is really stark color and another one is really light. You want them to be balanced. So I can't do that if I don't stir that up sometimes. Every once in a while you just got to stir stuff up, right? Hopefully not too much trouble. I end up stirring up too much sometimes when I just open my mouth. Okay, we're just going around anywhere there's hair. We're gonna dab a little of this gray on. And I just want that as an underpart because I don't like one color kind of carvings where you know this is the hair and it's all black, just jet black or whatever, or brown or whatever. Give it some layers. And most things, if you observe with an artist's eye, most things have gradations, hues, tones, shades, whatever word you want to use that's different. And so we got to make sure we're honoring that. So I'm going to do this, and I've got this on all of my gray. Got one little spot that don't want to come off of there. And get it there. Got a gray. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I'm not even going to bother with it being wet. I'm going to see if I can just get a little bit of white, take a lot of it off, and just come in here and just put it, no, that's too much. Just put it in here. It's going to soak in, but I'm just going to put a layer of gray on the top of it, and then I'm going to come back with a layer of dry brush white. But I'm just trying to give it a little bit of color, because essentially when I'm done, I want about 2 or 3 colors on here. 2 or 3 shades rather. I'm only using white and gray, but I want 2 or 3 shades, and I keep going back not to the well, but to where I thinned it out up here, and that allows me to just hit those highlights. I'm going to come back in here with just a little bit more out there because I want to do that hair, and I want to do this real quick. I don't want to linger in one spot, or as my painting guy Jerry Yarnell says, I'm not going to sit here and piddle. I ain't going to play, and I'm not going to putter. I'm going to get in, get after it, get it done. Okay. I've got that gray all the way around his beard. And if I left it at that, you know, that's an okay Santa Claus look. I don't have a problem with that. But what I really want to do is grab some white, and I don't want it to be real stark, but I'm going to grab some white, and I'm going to grab a small, I got 3 of them. I can always find 2 when I want them, but I can't find the 3rd when I want it. Come here. Where are you at? Here. There we go. It's not kind of like fishing. You walk up to the bank, or you get in a boat. Fish are jumping everywhere. You throw your line in there, and they ignore it. And I know what you say. Here, fishy, fishy. Okay. I got a little bit of white directly from the cap, and I dabbed it in there, and I want it all the way through my brush. I'm going to squeeze it in there because when I come across, I want to just leave it. I just want to drag it and hot dry brush. You see that? I want to dry brush across and leave that white as a highlight on all the hair. It's got white, it's got gray, and now it's got some pure white. I'm just going to dab that in there. Sorry, I'm shaking the whole table. The camera's going all over the place. All right. So we're going to do that all the way across. You don't need a lot of paint to do this. In fact, you want to scrape off on your dry brush beading here. You want to scrape off somewhere upwards of about 90% of it. You want just a little bit, and sometimes you have to go back over it because the layer underneath is wet. You might have to go and be a little more judicious about where you put pure paint, because you want some places like that. Look at the difference between here and here. I went back with a little bit more paint, and it just gives it a few more highlights. You know, we've all seen folks with highlights in their hair, and we look for that, and some folks like doing that directly from the salon. They want highlights. They want their hair to stand out, and that's all we're doing. We're giving Santa Claus here a little bit better highlight. Maybe I have that upside down. Let's try it that way. Okay. All right, the only thing we have left really is dry brushing the overall effect, and then making the facial features to have a little more color. Right now, I've used just boiled linseed oil or refined linseed oil, and so it's got a yellow sheen to it. That's the color of the linseed oil. But it's raised the grain. You can see just a little bit of the grain sticking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with, find an empty well here. I just want a little bit, you know, and I'm not even going to dip, I'm not even going to squirt it out there. I'm just going to come in here with the brush. I'm going to get a little bit of that. This is base flesh. I want to put that in one well because I don't need much of it. A few drops of paint. We'll mix it up. And that looks like a good base flesh. Close that nut, because if I spill it, I'm in trouble. Through the lid on the floor. All right. Then I want a little bit of this deep blush. So I'm going to take a little bit of that, about the same amount that I did with the other one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops of water. See the difference in those two colors? That's the flesh tone difference that you get with humans. Now, one of the things I learned from my mentor is to go back and forth. So I'm going to do a little bit here, mix that, go straight to here, go back. I'm going to do this about 2 or 3 times, and what that does is make these colors closer together in hue, shading, whatever you want to call it. You can see the difference. Let me show you. Here's the left with the base flesh. Here's the right with the dark flesh. Sorry, let me get paint on there instead of just water. Come off of there. So you can see the difference in the 2 colors. One's a little bit lighter, more of a yellow tone. One's a little bit redder, more of an orangish tone. So what I'm going to do is, now that I know those colors are right, I'm going to add a little bit more water to water it down, because I don't want stark colors on here. I'm going right here, and I'm just going to cover the whole thing in the first lightest color. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to come back with that other color and see what that looks like. And I don't get a whole lot more color, but I get just a little bit. So I'm going to go back in, mix it up again, come back and see what that does on the nose, because I know the nose is going to be redder when I'm done, because that's, you know, the feature of the Santa. And so there we go. We put all that color that we wanted. And so I see gradations in the, I hope you can see that, maybe not. I see gradations in the way the color is showing up. That's a good thing to have. Now I'm going to go back to my tomato red, and I just want a dab. So all I'm going to do, and that's what this middle portion of my palette is for a little dab. I'm going to get a little dab in there. That's all I need. I don't want it to be really stark red. I want it to blend with those other 2 semi-reds that I got. So I'm going to get a little bit of color. And when we do that, we've watered it down about as much as we can. If I touch that nose, looky there, looky there. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. He's got a red nose. If we want to, we can give him some red cheeks, just a touch. Just a little bit. Underneath. Make sure you get underneath. You don't want those white spots there. Way down here in the corner where the nose and the cheek meet. I don't want light spots down in there. Look at him. Look at there. Couple little spots where I splashed over. I'm going to go back over here, right here. I don't know if you can see it right there. There's a little bit of red dot right there. Yep, covered him. Right here, I've got a little bit of red missing, so I'm going to come back to my original red. I don't want it straight on. I want it just a wash, because otherwise I'm going to blend it in, because that's what I want to do. Okay. Got a little white something there. Don't know why. Look over, there's another little spot right there. Feather that in, otherwise it'll show harsh lines. You got a little spot here. Not that you need to see me sit here and play and putter with everything, but just so you know what the process looks like. There's no magic here. There's no wonderkind here doing something that you can't do. This is all me and you doing the same thing. Okay. Oh, got a white spot back here. Let's see if there's 2 ways I can take care of that. A couple of different ways. Can I scratch it off? Mostly. I can come back here with some watered out. Feather it out. And don't fret, all these color, you're working with wood, and so it soaks in differently in some spots. So right down here, it's soaked in more than it did up here. Don't worry about that. We're going to go over it here in just a minute with a dry brush. And the dry brush is going to allow us to even out some of those colors and bring out some of those facets. Give me about 15 seconds on the hairdryer to dry it out, and we'll be back in a second. I think that was 15 seconds. I counted in my head. I might have been wrong. Okay. Dry brush is one of those things that can easily be overdone. So one of the things we want to make sure is that we can always do it again. We can always add more. We just don't want to add too much at the beginning. So for dry brush, for dark colors, I use a light buttermilk. That's the name of that, buttermilk. And so I'm going to put some up there in the top, pull that top off, and I should have some paint in there. I want to go back to the same brush, but just a little bit bigger. You can buy these little makeup brushes, I don't know, $4 or $5 somewhere. We have Fred Meyer around here. You may have Walmart or Hobby Lobby or Michael's or Craft Warehouse like we have. All of them have that. And so dry brush is simply going to make an opportunity for us to pick up all of these facets. Because if you'll look at someone's clothing, my son and I were talking about that yesterday, talking about art. The clothing you have has wrinkles in it, and those wrinkles create shadows because it's darker under that wrinkle than it is outside of the wrinkle. And so we're just pulling out these facets. So I just want a little bit of paint on that brush. That's quite a bit, actually. Most of that's going to come off. So I do it here on my, I use this newsprint right here because it protects my artist mats behind me. I can take the artist mat and sand it down and get all those things off of it, but I'll protect it as much as I can. I'm going to dab that all in, and it looks very glistening. It's glistening. I'm going to do that until I get out here. When I do this, not much comes off on the paper. So when I do it on the carving, see what it does to that edge? It picked up that facet. And so usually you just want to come in here and very lightly rake across the facet. Number one, this has got to be dry. If it's wet on the carving, you're gonna have a mess. If it's wet on the brush, you're gonna have an even bigger mess because all it does is drag all those lines. You want it to look like it's running up and down the facets. If it's wet, it just drags them across those lines. But this gives me an opportunity to show facets. It's funny because for years the knockoff market that does resin or whatever didn't do this. They didn't dry brush and highlight their stuff. They just carved and painted, and all that was done with paint. Well, this is an easy way for you to do this and to be able to show your customers that this is real wood and that it's been hand carved. There's no machine work here other than cutting it out on the bandsaw and finishing it with the Dremel that I do. All of that, look at that, it's still got a lot of paint in it. So it's just enough to give me highlights without screaming at me. In other words, these are highlights that are very subtle. And especially down here at the bottom, I don't want that black to go away. I want it to show up, but I don't want it to be the most glaring thing that you see. Okay. Now, we may be done. We could be done right now. But I notice right here where the mustache and beard are, I would like a little more contrast. And so I'm going to grab my white again, pull that out, and I am going to go back to that other brush that I was using a minute ago, this smaller makeup brush. These things don't last very long before they get filled up with paint, so I might have to replace these anytime soon. Anyway, again, dabbing in our paint lid, getting paint on the tip, taking most of it off. Let's see, did we do it? Let's go across the back of the hair, see what that does. Yep, that's exactly what I was looking for. I love it when a plan comes into play. I probably said that wrong, but it's all right. You know what I meant. You know that old question people ask all the time, how do I know when I'm done? I always say, wait, you're done when you are. If I was painting a tree, I could simply paint every branch and every leaf on that tree. Am I going to? Not if I hope to sell it or give it away to somebody, because otherwise it'll sit on my easel for a long time. These carvings will sit on your paint table for a long time. I did not highlight and dry brush the yellow. Let's see what that looks like when we do that. That might be the piece we're missing here. Okay. Make sure my brush is dry. I just washed it off a minute ago. Make sure I get plenty of paint in there. Make sure I wash most of it off, because this is just going to be literally a drag. I'm dragging across. And you won't be able, oh, there we go. Hopefully you can see that. I sure can, sitting here in the studio. Because we're doing this heavier than we would something else, we probably have to come back here a couple more times to get that off of there. But this is just the final highlight when we're done. Make sure you don't splash it all over the place, because there's only a few places where you want this highlight. You don't want it on the red at all. You want that red to be highlighted with that buttermilk. But we've gone around, we've highlighted, we've brought out the facets, we've dry brushed. We're going to call this done. Hope you've enjoyed this trip. I'm going to take him out and I'm going to dry. Finally, I'll hit the hair dryer, make sure it's completely dry. And I'm going to spray it with Minwax polyurethane, either a warm semi-gloss or a satin. Satin will give you no shininess to it, whereas a warm semi-gloss or a semi-gloss would give you, in some places, a little bit of shininess to it. I don't like to shiny up a lot of my carvings. There's not many opportunities I have to see shiny people in life or shiny objects, and so I don't like to do that a lot on my carvings. Not saying that there's anything wrong with it. It's just, for me, I don't prefer to do that. I've seen a lot of people where the carving is completely shiny, and to me, for my carvings, that detracts from it. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this couple of hours we spent together doing this, a little over 2 hours, and I've had a lot of fun. I love these things. They draw a lot of attention when I put them out on a table for carving nights or put them out on a table for my shows, and I'd really like the comments that I get. I've sold a few of them, and it's a good project. I hope you enjoy it. Leave your comments in the comment section there, and I appreciate it. I read them all, and most of them I respond to. I don't think there's very many that I don't respond to, because if you're going to take the time to listen and make a comment, I want to hear what you have to say. Whether I agree with it or not, I want to hear what you have to say. So, because it makes me reflect on what I'm doing, and I'm always a reflective person. Anyway, it was fun carving with you. I enjoyed it. I love this project, and I will see you around the carving table next time. God bless and take care. Have a great day.